Have you ever wondered why, even after reaching what should be the most freeing stage of life, mornings feel heavy, conversations feel exhausting, and every interaction seems to demand an invisible ledger of explanations from you, as if your choices, your time, your peace had to be justified endlessly? And why, despite decades of experience, wisdom, and independence, life sometimes still feels like a courtroom where you are always on trial, defending why you choose to live differently now, why you no longer conform to habits that once defined you, why you take longer pauses before answering questions, why you travel slower, rest more, and smile less at things that used to excite you. And the answer, the hidden truth most people don't talk about, isn't money, isn't health, isn't loneliness, it's the silent, invisible weight of explaining yourself constantly, a habit built over decades, reinforced by expectations, society, family, and even your own inner critic. That habit becomes heavier with age because energy after 60 is no longer limitless. And while younger selves could absorb judgment, navigate criticism, and keep defending choices without real damage, older selves carry the cumulative toll of every word, every apology, every justification ever given, and it accumulates quietly, like layers of dust on a beautiful antique, until one day you feel it crushing the shoulders you once thought unbreakable. And this is why some seniors wake up feeling burdened, even when everything external seems fine. Because life's real weight after 60 is emotional, psychological, and surprisingly invisible. And if you pay attention, you'll notice it in subtle ways. In the hesitation before sharing a new travel plan with friends, in the careful wording before refusing invitations, in the tiny flinches when explaining why you need quiet mornings, longer naps, simpler routines, or different foods. It's all part of the same story, and most people don't even realize they're still paying a tax they no longer owe. Because explaining oneself is like giving permission to others to judge your life, a currency you've been spending unconsciously for decades. And once you start noticing it, the clarity hits like a wave. The realization that freedom doesn't begin with retirement, doesn't start with travel, doesn't come with money. It begins the moment you stop giving explanations for your choices that nobody really asked for. And the beauty of this realization is subtle but profound. It doesn't require confrontation. It doesn't require rebellion. It doesn't need loud announcements. It's a quiet liberation, a shedding of invisible chains. And once you start letting go, the world shifts. It's noticeable in the way conversations feel shorter, but deeper. In the way silence stops feeling awkward and starts feeling intentional. In the way your body relaxes, your mind slows. Your smile reaches your eyes rather than your mouth. And this isn't theoretical. I've seen it in seniors who have embraced this truth. People in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, who stopped explaining why they travel alone, why they sleep when they want, why they eat what they want, why they no longer attend family events that drain them, why they take long walks instead of rushing errands. And in every case, there's a visible shift, a subtle glow, a lightness that comes from refusing to justify existence to anyone but yourself. And that shift transforms travel, transforms social interactions, transforms daily routines. Because when you stop explaining, energy is freed, mental space opens, and life stops being a performance. It becomes experience, pure, rich, slow, intentional. And if you pause and imagine yourself at 60 or beyond, what would it feel like to stop explaining every choice, every habit, every preference to the world? To stop rehearsing responses to questions you never needed to answer? To stop carrying the emotional baggage of others' judgments? It's revolutionary in its simplicity, and yet most people never realize it until decades later, after energy has been spent defending unnecessary explanations, after smiles have been diluted by social politeness, After adventures have been measured against what others expect. And the irony is, the very act of explaining never changes anyone's opinion, never satisfies the observer, and rarely creates understanding. It only creates fatigue. And what we see repeatedly in older adults who have embraced the opposite, who stopped over-explaining, is a quiet, understated joy. A lightness that radiates without effort. It's visible in body language, in the ease of steps while walking through airports or markets, in the calm clarity of decisions, in the confidence to say yes or no without fear. And this lightness isn't about arrogance. It's not about shutting people out. It's about reclaiming space, energy, and life. A principle that applies to travel as much as it does to conversation, to hobbies, to friendships, to family interactions, to self-care, and even health routines. Because explaining consumes energy that could otherwise be used to explore, to rest, to create, to connect meaningfully, to laugh, to reflect, to notice sunrise, sunset, or the subtle beauty in mundane routines. And while younger people often confuse explanation with communication, after 60, you learn the difference. Communication is exchange, explanation is defense. And understanding that difference is transformative, because it allows you to stop defending everything that doesn't need defense, to stop carrying every question, every opinion, every expectation that was never yours to carry. And this freedom manifests in travel immediately. People who travel after 60 often feel compelled to justify destinations, timing, companions, budgets, itineraries, activities. And yet those who stop explaining experience a freedom that money or fame could never buy. They walk slower, they notice more. They engage differently, they savor meals, sunsets, conversations with strangers, and their experiences become their own without external validation. And the lightness extends beyond travel. It shapes the entire second half of life, because energy is finite, attention is finite, patience is precious, and the habit of constant explanation is an invisible thief that robs all three. And so when seniors let it go, life begins to expand in subtle, almost imperceptible ways, like a river widening slowly after years of being confined by banks. And the most powerful lesson here is that explaining yourself doesn't make you understood. It only makes you tired, and after 60, the price is too high. And yet, breaking the habit isn't sudden. It's gradual, a conscious choice every day. A decision to pause before answering, to ask yourself, do I really need to justify this? And to allow silence, space, and confidence to speak instead. And in this practice, life becomes lighter, stress diminishes, clarity grows, and happiness, small and large, becomes accessible without effort, because freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's not having to defend why you do it. And the people who matter, the ones who truly see you, don't need explanations anyway. They simply appreciate, understand, and share space with you. And this realization reshapes every relationship, every journey, every moment, every habit, every decision, every coffee, every train ride, every hotel room, every step outside your front door. Because when you stop explaining, life is no longer cluttered by invisible obligations. And finally, you start living in the purest, simplest, most joyful way possible. A life that is truly yours, unburdened, intentionally slow, and profoundly light. And that, perhaps, is the greatest secret most people never tell you about aging, about freedom, about traveling, about happiness, about being 60, 70, or 80. And the suggestion I want to leave you with right now, something to carry into tomorrow, is this. Before you answer the next question, before you justify the next choice, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, do I really need to explain this? And if the answer is no, don't. Save your energy. Save your peace, Save your life and watch how the weight you've been carrying quietly lifts. Slowly, beautifully, irreversibly, and with it, life itself feels lighter, freer, and infinitely more meaningful than any explanation could ever make it.
Have you ever noticed how, after decades of trying to meet expectations, your family's, society's, friends, even your own, you begin to realize that most of the energy you've been spending, defending, justifying, explaining, is not only wasted, but also quietly stealing joy from the years you have left? And what if I told you that the single most liberating thing you can do after 60 isn't a new hobby, a new home, or a new vacation, but simply stopping the habit of explaining yourself to anyone who doesn't genuinely need to know your reasoning? Because this habit, invisible but relentless, has been accumulating weight your entire life, like a backpack filled with stones you never unpacked. Each stone representing a reason you had to defend yourself, why you took a certain job, why you didn't take another, why you married who you did, why you didn't, why you spent money on yourself, why you didn't, why you travel, why you don't, why you rest, why you work, why you speak, why you remain silent, why you love, why you withhold love. And the truth is, the backpack is never lighter if you keep explaining, because every explanation is just adding another stone, even if it's small. And after 60, every ounce matters, because physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, they are all finite. And the difference between feeling drained or feeling alive can hinge on whether you say, "I don't need to explain myself" once in a conversation or 10 times in a day. And this simple choice, repeated, becomes revolutionary. Because when you stop explaining, boundaries finally take root, peace finally grows, confidence finally blooms, and travel changes completely. It becomes something you do for yourself, for experience, for curiosity, not for approval, not for applause, not for Instagram likes, not to prove anything. And imagine yourself walking through a bustling European train station, suitcase in hand, years of habit whispering that you should explain why you're taking this route, why you're alone, why your schedule isn't conventional. And then imagine pausing, smiling inwardly, and saying nothing at all. And in that silence, the first wave of lightness hits. The air feels clearer, the pace slows, the beauty hits differently. Conversations with strangers flow naturally because there's no pretense, no defense, only engagement. And it's not just about travel, it's about every interaction. Because when you stop explaining, people who truly care will understand without explanation, and people who don't care will quietly drift away. And both outcomes are liberating, because you're no longer trying to control perception, you're no longer trying to meet invisible quotas of approval. You're free. And that freedom translates into every aspect of life. Mornings feel softer, coffee tastes better, a walk in the park feels longer and more meaningful, reading a book feels deeper, sleeping feels restorative, and even relationships gain clarity because you stop wasting time explaining choices to those who will never understand, and instead focus on sharing meaningful moments with those who do. And this isn't theoretical. I've met countless seniors who've made this shift, some at 62, some at 78, some at 85, and they all describe the same change, an invisible burden lifted, a lightness of being, a calmness in the body, a quiet joy in the mind, a softness in the soul. And the pattern is always the same. It begins with a decision, a pause, a tiny rebellion against the years of habitual explanation, and it grows into a lifestyle where choices are yours, energy is yours, time is yours, peace is yours. And traveling alone, eating differently, resting more, saying no, choosing what matters, walking slower, noticing more, all of it becomes effortless because you've stopped negotiating your life with everyone around you. And this is where the magic happens, because the energy you save from not explaining can now be invested into experiences, relationships, memories, dreams, and the small joys that really matter, the ones that don't require validation. Because at 60 and beyond, you realize validation is optional, understanding is optional, approval is optional, but life itself is not. And the irony is beautiful. Most people spend decades chasing validation, explanations, approvals, and in the process, they miss the quiet joys that are right in front of them. And this is why lightness feels like a revelation. It's not about adding more, it's about subtracting, removing, letting go, and creating space for life to breathe. And travel becomes the ultimate teacher, because nothing exposes the need for explanation like unfamiliar places, new languages, strangers' questions, unexpected situations. And yet, when you stop explaining, each moment becomes an adventure in perception, attention, and presence, because you are no longer trapped by the invisible chains of others' judgments. You walk differently, you breathe differently, you see differently, you feel differently, and it's addictive in the best way. A quiet, profound, healthy addiction to living for yourself. Because energy, time, peace, these are the most precious currencies after 60, not money, not material possessions. And the shift also transforms internal life, because your mind stops rehearsing defenses, your emotions are freer, your body carries less tension, your heart rests easier, and even the brain responds to this liberation with clarity, focus, and curiosity that often surpasses what you had at 40 or 50, because your mind is no longer overburdened with invisible debts. And the storytelling of your life, which was once constantly justified to everyone around you, now unfolds naturally, effortlessly, beautifully, without pressure, without apology, without defense. And every day, every step, every glance, every interaction becomes richer, because the habit of explaining is replaced with a habit of choosing, deciding, feeling, experiencing, and sharing only when meaningful. And it's subtle, not flashy, but unmistakable, like a sunrise that slowly paints the sky. And the beauty is that others notice, but in a completely different way, with respect, admiration, curiosity, not judgment. And that respect is earned naturally, not demanded, not negotiated, not explained. And this is the ultimate lesson of the second half of life. Stop explaining, start living, and everything shifts, because energy is reclaimed, peace is protected, joy is amplified, travel is enriched, relationships are clarified, time is honored, and life itself feels lighter, freer, more meaningful than you ever imagined. And here's the suggestion to carry forward immediately. Before every conversation, every decision, every interaction, ask yourself, do I really need to explain this? And if the answer is no, don't. Don't even whisper, don't justify, don't defend. Let your life, your choices, your actions speak for themselves, and watch how invisible weight melts, how mornings feel softer, how journeys feel longer, how conversations feel deeper, how laughter becomes easier, how sleep becomes restorative, and how smiles reach the eyes, how energy multiplies, how clarity sharpens, how freedom grows. Because after 60, the most powerful change you can make isn't acquiring more, it's explaining less. And when you embrace this, life becomes lighter, travel becomes joyful, moments become richer, relationships become easier, and your second half of life, the golden years, finally become exactly what they were always meant to be: intentional, peaceful, light, free, beautiful, and entirely your own.